And they go, well, we were the first one to do a fireplace. And I said, well, this one's called Madame Frenchie's. It had a fireplace, a wallpaper, and a love seat in it. I actually found Carroll Shelby's Pantera that Lee Iacocca gave him a NASCAR engine to put in it and kind of race around in. And
this is going to be like the guy that was a playboy that opened a topless joint that turned into a homosexual. We are on the air this morning with Mr. L.A., the largest Ford dealer in the world, Beau Boeckmann. Now, I've known you to have that title for decades. I don't know if that's still the current title. I'm sure if you took cumulative Ford sales, you definitely have it. Has anybody... Go ahead.
I'm looking to see if we could actually get that information, because you are correct. At this very moment, we're second in the world. Mm-hmm. Outside of a dealer that's in Detroit that sells a lot of the Ford employees and everything, but right. I'm not taking that away from him. But we
hang on, pause. What he just said is they get layup shots to employee plan deals for
but they still count.
But it is layup shots. You know it, and I know it.
Yeah, but we're working hard to get that back. So there's no questions and no excuses, no asterisks. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
So, but it's all good. They do a great job out there, so I can't take anything away from them.
I've heard of your company. I've been in the biz for 30 years. I've heard of your company all my life.
Oh, thank you.
And it's famous. The guys in California, because I'm in Texas, right? And it was always you in the Toyota store out there. Was there a time when y'all were open 24 hours a day?
It felt like that when I was selling cars. I remember doing deals till 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning. If a customer walked in at 9:30 at night, which was our closing hours, mm-hmm. we sold them a car. It didn't matter,
Sure.
when we left. We were here till the last customer left. It's a little bit like, so it wasn't quite like Vegas, but I'll tell you, sometimes it felt that way, because back then. They didn't give you any leeway the next morning. You had to be at work if you were on shift at 8:30. So if you're here till 3 o'clock, you go home, sleep in your clothes, wake up, and come back. But now it's a little different.
Long ago, Toyota was actually a 24-hour office hours, wasn't it, at one point?
I think they did.
I think they did too.
Which is hard to imagine.
Can you imagine that?
I remember. Good old Cal Worthington from Worthington Ford.
I was just thinking of this.
Up until midnight.
With the monkey on his back.
Oh, exactly. Oh, those are some great commercials growing up. I miss that guy. He was a real character in our business. He lived it.
Well, what brought us together and what got me interested to have you on the show today is the fact that you're a big position in classic and collector cars. I just call them C&C for short. And
that's cool.
your collection, I opened a sub shot of my company, Give Me the VIN, called GMTVCC. So like if you want to sell your classic and collector car, go to gmtvcc.com. And I really enjoy it. Like you're the king of Fords. They call me the king of wholesale. I don't know if you know much about me, but I'm the largest wholesaler in the planet. 50,000 cars a year, $2 billion a year in sales.
That's amazing. Yeah, we got to talk. I need some cars, man.
I'm not some venture capital job. It's me. I started from one car.
That's amazing. Wow, what a story.
No partners, the works. And
wow.
And it's but you do so much of it. Yeah, it's very hard work. You do so much of it. My dad told me when I started, he said, this is going to be like the guy that was a playboy that opened a topless joint that turned into a homosexual. And I was like, what do you mean? And now I know exactly what he means. You get tired, you get overexposed. So to keep interested in the business, I started getting into the collector cars and the specialty cars and the resto mods and the this and that. And that's why I was wondering what drug you into that space, because y'all are so big in the domestic car business, right? You've got all kinds of brands, and hell, and imports as well. But this is different.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because my father always loved automobiles and great designs and driving. He was such a big guy; he couldn't fit in sports cars and things like that. Mm-hmm. So he was more of a business person who loved people, and he was in the business for the love of people and serving people, and really helped propel Galpin into what it is today from a tiny little dealership. Mm-hmm. So for me growing up, And as part of that, part of serving our customers was being open to new ideas. So we were, quote unquote, galvanizing vehicles, which is our version of customizing. And, we did all kinds of like really crazy and outrageous things. We're here in LA, but like the surfer van, business started here at Galpin, and that grew into these, really wild conversion vans that had, all kinds of themes.
What year are you talking? When did that begin?
So this was in the late 60s.
So your dad was making surfer vans in the he started that whole movement?
Well, that's
the wives'
where we
tale?
trace it back to.
Sure.
But
The bubble
it's
window, the heart window, the
yeah. Well, a lot of those trends would have started here at Galpin, and we sometimes it's hard to trace exactly how, because it wasn't like my dad was up here designing cars. What we were doing was listening to people, and then as people had different ideas, then we just put them together. We would build them and then actually put them out on the lot. So we were the ones that were building them for to put on display and then sell to customers versus customers coming in and working with a designer to build them.
right.
So we actually took the chance of having these as stock units. And we did the same thing with off-road vehicles. And it really helped our sales tremendously because Dad would talk about our 4x4 sales. We're out here in California, and he said we'd sell 2 a year, one at the beginning of hunting season and one during the clearance sale, at the end of the year.
Right.
And when we started, actually, it was our Get Ready manager that said, Bert, why don't we start building them up the way I see people want them, the way I do them, the way I see kids. And, we started doing the lift and the big wheels and tires and the winches and the paint jobs and the light bars. So we would build them that way and put them out on the lot. And it went from 2 a year to selling 25 a month. So it became like a whole kind of craze here at Galpin. And the same with the conversion vans. We used to sell, about 25 vans a month. We got up to selling 125 conversion vans a month. I mean, it was a huge business. Then we got into the RV business. We were selling motorhomes, and then we actually started a motorhome business. And my mom designed like the interiors of that. And I used to say like the interiors of motorhomes used to be more like Motel 6, and then we were designing them like the Four Seasons. So
Right.
I mean, we became like the largest RV manufacturer in California. So
What
it
brand was that?
it was called the Establishment
Okay.
because there was a lot of this whole anti-establishment thing going on. So they were kind of like ironic to that, calling themselves the Establishment.
So you're telling me y'all started all this shit.
Well,
And
we
I
have
believe
been
you.
credited with
Because
that,
when I was a
yes.
kid, it was all in California. In California, when I was a kid, everything was about California. Lift
Yeah.
kits, this, that. It was just all you heard about is California. To the point, I'm so sick of hearing about California. But what
Yeah.
you're going back on these dates, and you're reminding me of things. And if y'all were some pioneers on the front of those trends, and a lot of those trends have come back in full swing in the past 10 years.
They really have.
Lift kits are bigger than they ever were. And in the 80s and 70s, they were really big. But now they're just like ridiculously big. But
Oh,
somebody started all that.
Well, and like I said, my dad really, it was about listening
Right.
and giving people what they want. And there's some articles actually in like the Ford magazines where my dad was doing stories where we were, focused on the youth, as he said back then, and focused on young people and cool trends. And, that's always the right thing. When you're focused on serving people, and I've got kids that are teenagers, and you look at what they're into, that's going to be what's popular very
Sure.
soon. And kids have a much larger influence on our market industry than we ever give them credit for. So we've always tried to look at that because so many times, I still do it. Like we go to our kids and say, "What's cool?" And then we follow what they say. Now we're not going to tell the salesperson that,
Right.
like our kids said
Right.
this was cool.
You had the idea,
but-
damn it.
Yeah, but
I'm the
but
boss.
They get it, better than. Then we go, you know what? You're right. That is cool. And so we've got to always, that's what's been a joy here. Pay attention to what kids are doing, what young people are liking, what trends are. Not to be trendy, but to try to do what's something to do a little bit more timeless. Of course,
What's
there's
cool
something-
right now? What are you pushing for the next trends?
Well,
Because it sounds like you guys like being in front of it.
we try to be, and it's about listening. And sometimes it's hard to see. When during COVID and what happened at SEMA, you couldn't see trends really developing. Other than, I'll tell you right now, it's off road.
Agreed.
It's back to fixing up your truck.
A Dakar Porsche.
Yeah, and it's fun. And you know what? What I'm loving and finding out about this next, Gen Z is,
Mhm.
yeah, they have their time on their tablets and their phone, but they're also into experiences and getting away from that, where maybe the generation before got a little bit too obsessed with it. I'm seeing kids get their driver's license at 16 again.
Right.
I'm seeing them talk about cars. I'm seeing them, taking my kids' friends to the auto show and them just going nuts. I'm like, these kids are more like I remember growing up. And they want to not just have an experience on their phone, they want real world experiences. And I think there's this genuine look, and going through COVID of getting into the outdoors about, off-roading is fun. And,
Right.
even here in LA, we can drive 45 minutes
Be at the
and
coolest stuff in
it's
the
not,
world.
yeah, and it's not like some really gnarly off-road track. I mean, it's not like rock crawling and things like that, but you can go out and have fun. So that's where like the Broncos been a huge hit for us. My kids wanted Broncos, God bless them. That's what they wanted. My one daughter wanted a Mustang, and my other daughter wanted a Bronco. So I'm like, yeah, yeah. That,
When the Raptor first came out, we get press cars. The factories give us stuff to review on the radio. And when the new Raptor came out, not the new one, but the first one, and
yeah.
I gave him my review, and the CEO from Ford called me. He said, "I
Uh-huh.
can't believe you said that about my car." He said, "That's the best review I've ever heard in my life." And it was,
Which is,
I said, because you've driven a Raptor, you know how they are off road.
oh
I
yeah.
said, "This thing is so smooth. You can run across the hunting lease at 60 miles an hour with a gin and tonic in your hand and your rifle in the other, driving with your knees, and you won't miss shot and you won't spill your drink."
That is a good review, sir.
But they are incredible the way they soak up the terrain, the way the
Oh,
shocks work now. Is I took my Land Cruiser and put King shocks on it, lifted up. I mean, it's just, and it rides like a Raptor. Raptor is underrated for how well it rides off road. It's unreal.
it's unbelievable. And, it's funny because I've got friends that do very well in life and they just want to drive a Raptor. Now I'm talking about the Raptor F-150
Sure.
because, if they have like clients or things, oh, they're just driving a truck. It's not like they're driving, an Aston Martin or something like that. They go to a restaurant in Beverly Hills. Hey, it's a
It's a
Raptor.
Raptor.
If they go to a part of town that's maybe not as affluent or a
Mhm.
little, a little sketchy, it's a truck.
Right.
So they're not worried about it. And they're not looking like there's some, like I said, a guy climbing out of a Ferrari or an Aston Martin or, or something like that. So they literally feel great because they can take it everywhere. Yeah, if it gets scratched, it's a truck. It's
Right.
supposed to have a little bit of wear and tear on it. So it's become in LA this, well, I think everywhere, this great tool that you can, drive every day. And if you want to take it off road and then take it back home, it works
It
for
can black
everything.
tie or barbecue.
There you go.
So I'm listening to what you're saying, and I'm having so Galpin Ford. Now, what was the brand? Is Galpin Auto Sports is the specialty brand?
Yeah, that's our customizing division. So we opened that about 2005.
Because
That's
it
when,
sounds like you were Mr. Norms and Yenko, but you're still open.
well, that's there's some truth in that. We never had a particular brand.
Hmm.
We always had it just called Galpanized when we
Right.
customized the vehicle. But we've got some cool history in that we were also, legitimate, a legitimate NASCAR team.
Okay.
Back in the 60s, we actually won the West Coast NASCAR division 4 years in a row. And the last 2 years was our service manager, Ron Hornaday.
Hmm.
And so we use that to, build custom suspensions and do performance work. And, I laugh because as crazy as it sounds, when you brought your car into service at Galpin, and this is when we were in San Fernando, by the way, uh, before we moved to this current location, like you literally had a NASCAR team working on your car, and we were able to kind of do things that, other dealers might not have the same level of expertise. Although my dad would say, Monday was a real problem because all the mechanics, they were out, working all weekend with Ron and racing and going up to Riverside and all these places. And he'd come in Monday morning and they'd be all slumped over, slumped over the cars, like passed out. He's like, "Come on, guys, like we got customers here." But it was a lot of fun back in the day. That was 61 to 64. And on the custom car side, we actually built our first Galpin custom back in 1952, and it was a full-on custom that actually went to the Pan Pacific Auditorium for auto. What was that called? The Autorama.
Autorama, yeah.
It went in the same year as the Hirohata Merc, and it was actually on the cover of Motor Trend magazine, and that hit in 1953. And my dad came actually to sell cars at Galpin in 1953. So we have this really fun history to draw upon that's absolutely legitimate, and in all the different areas that we did. We sponsored a lot of racing after we got out of racing ourselves, and like I said, it makes for some fun history and great pictures. And one of these days we're going to finish our book that'll have all this stuff in it.
You've got a hell of a coffee table book ready if you don't have one if it's not made.
I'm literally working on it every day right now to get it finished, because we've been digging through our archives and finding some really fun pictures. And we were always into really unusual, like, cars and unusual promotions, and especially back in the 60s and 70s and getting into the 80s. I mean, there was all kinds of crazy stuff going on that we participated in.
Richard Rollins is a really good friend of mine, and the more I'm listening to you talk, y'all do a lot of the same crazy stuff, because they just look at cars like, what can we do wild? And I noticed that you're a big fan of Roth, Big Daddy Roth, the Rat Fink Man,
yeah.
and he was the wildest most abstract artist, if that's what you want to call it, in the trade. He took fiberglass and made crazy things with it, and it's really really awesome. I know you restored some of his cars. Have you built some cars from scratch in that vein?
So our hot rod builder, his name is Dave Shutton. He's got a huge Instagram following because he is a absolute artist.
Okay.
And if you look at Big Daddy Roth, he was an artist. He was building kinetic sculptures and doing things that nobody else was doing, and taking chances and really being out there, which is what I really loved. I did a speech for the Auto Week Design Forum, which was called "Why Not?" Like, we didn't ask why, we asked why not, and that's what I loved about my parents. They were very open to those things. So Dave actually built a bubble top tribute to Roth, which is amazingly cool. He did that before we were working together, and then together we built some pretty crazy hot rods. We built one called the Iron Orchid, that to me it's a 34 34 Ford, that was just kind of an extreme hot rod of the day. But we're always thinking about what's that next project, and we've just kind of started toying with the idea of what's going to be the next thing that's kind of really out there that the world hasn't quite seen yet.
Right.
We're kind of at the ideation stage, like, okay, well, this is the next thing we've got to do. I did a vehicle called Scythe right when we were finishing with Pimp My Ride. That was actually, I worked with Big Daddy Roth's designer, Newt.
Okay.
And we worked together on this, really elaborate design where we had a, twin supercharged 1,000 horsepower fiberglass body. It was a Mustang, but you'd never know.
So it weighed nothing.
Yeah, and we took the whole, body apart, and then it was, a wraparound glass that had a roof that was supported by the seats. It had a steering wheel on both sides, so if you're driving through the channel, you could actually hit a button and change where it drove. We had technology built in it, way ahead of its time, that you could actually talk to the car and have it, do some of these functions by voice command, which is before Siri and all those things. Those things got dated pretty quickly. Technology moves really fast, and that was a while ago now. I mean, that was in 2008. So we're still building and restoring, some great cars and some really crazy cars, but we haven't done a like scratch built Big Daddy Roth inspired
Right.
car
Did you
in
happen to
a
see?
while.
Did you happen to see that wild Hummer that sold at Barrett last January? That went around the world on the internet. It was a 6x6, and it looked like something out of Mad Max. It sold for 750,000.
Yeah, it's familiar, but I'm not
Well,
putting. I
so I
can't
bought
quite picture.
it was the cars. These Frenchmen brought it in to Rollins Gas Monkey, and they wanted him to kiss it on the internet so that they would make them famous. And I
Uh-huh.
was like, I was there that day talking to him. I'm like, we got to buy this car. He's like, what do we give? And so we started negotiating, and we bought the car, and then he put it on Instagram, and it got 150 million views. It was the seventh most viewed car
Wow.
on Instagram. So by the time we got it to Barrett, it was famous. And part of the deal we made with the builders is that I will finesse the next build. So we kind of what you're
Oh,
saying. You had this great hit, right? And now
yeah,
we've got to beat it. So we've got
yeah.
we took a Testarossa, and we're doing a similar build. And I just went and visited it in Milwaukee, where their shop is last week, and we're racing for SEMA, the game, right?
Yeah, I
And
do.
then and we're gonna get it to Barrett, and we'll see if it beats the Hummer. But it's so fun when it works, and
That's so cool.
when you go to Barrett and it doesn't work, it really makes you mad because it's an
Yeah,
absolute sale.
I've been on that side and seen that side too, and that is no fun.
It
You
just
start
ruins your
yesterday.
night, dude. You're just like, oh
It
my
really
god,
does.
take your
It
drink and
really
throw it
does.
against the wall, and I mean,
Yeah.
it's years of
Oh,
work, right? And they just dropped the hammer on it, and nobody appreciated what you did. So when you have one hit like
yeah.
that, because we were figuring it was going to do 300, and it did 750. It's like, all right, cool. They saw it the way we
That's
saw it.
that's that's really cool.
It really
Yeah.
is fun. It really is fun. And something else that's super interesting, why I wanted to interview you, is what you and I have a lot in common is you work for a living and you have a large company with a lot of employees, and then you change hats and you turn into an entertainer on television. And I do the same because a lot of people know me as Radio Johnny, right? I mean, I've been doing this radio show live for almost 20 years. I've got a big fan base, and it's so fun. And I cut up, and it's kind of Howard Stern on cars kind of bit. I've been doing it forever.
Perfect.
People call into the show, and I bid their trade-ins on the air, and I argue with them about what they're worth, because that's how the whole show started 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Then it turned into this whole thing. But it was interesting to me that you have all this responsibility in your work life, and then you switch gears and you go do this discovery show. What was your experience with that? How much time did it take, and was it worth it? And I'm asking you this because I'm looking at a similar deal right now, and I'm worried about the time commitment on this Netflix show.
Oh yeah, the time's real,
Hmm.
man. I mean, it's like adding another full-time job on top of your full-time job, and you still got to get your first full-time job
Right.
done. For me, it started with Pimp My Ride in 2005.
Hmm.
And I had met the executive producers, and it was really funny because I kind of had my little book of all the galvanized cars and great guys. They came in and said, yeah, we met actually through Ford Global Entertainment, and one of the Ford family members kind of put us together. He goes, I got to see what's happening over at Galpin because we started building crazy cars again for our calendar and for promotions and things, and kind of getting wacky and out there again, bringing that spirit back
Right.
from like the 60s and 70s. And they'd say things like, well, we were the first to put a fish tank in a car. And I said, wow, this one we did in 1974. And they go, well, we were the first one to do a fireplace. And I said, well, this one's called Madame Frenchie's. It had a fireplace and fleur-de-lis, wallpaper, and a love seat in it. And I think it was from 1969. And so when they kept bringing these things up, I would like show these wild things that we did, back when I was a kid or before I
Right.
was born. And then they came back, a little bit later and said, well, what if we just did the show here? And I'm like, awesome. I mean, it would be great. And it helped us really. I mean, it was frantic all the time, but to put together a world-class team that could build these cars in an absolute, horrible time.
Right. Right.
But I was really proud because we never missed a deadline. I mean, there were times where we were pushing the car
Hmm.
to get that final shot, and we were like putting the badge on it, and
Mm-hmm.
like literally doing things at that last second. But we never missed a
Like
deadline.
90% of the SEMA cars that you'll see this November.
Yeah. And I always felt like we were one day and one person away from tragedy, but somehow we made it through, and it helped us get strong and build the right team. Like having Mad Mike that's still with us today and doing electronics and all kinds of fun things. So I never felt finished from doing that show, and always wanted to bring something back. I'd done some things for the History Channel in talking about the history of Ford Motor Company and some other things, and I got a lot of response that people really loved that, and they loved learning about the history, and decided to kind of take that and put it together with a build show and really honor the people that had been forgotten, and cars that people that really hadn't got their due, and cars that maybe had been forgotten as well, and do a kind of combination of the history of kind of car culture and this person around then restoring this car. Like for example, we did a Brubaker box, which was a very California oddball kind of vehicle, and Mr. Brubaker was a really brilliant inventor and designer. I mean, he designed what ultimately, I mean, controversially, a design that looks almost identical to the Cybertruck
Mm-hmm.
that was in a magazine back in the 70s.
Really?
He was like this guy way ahead of his time. And he
It's like the
designed
guy
this,
that invented Learjet, Bill Lear. I don't know if you've ever read about him. He's
but
like that. I just love those people. They're just thinking
yeah,
and making stuff. The steam car, the
yeah,
the ADF, the Learjet. He just all over the board making cool stuff.
yeah, and then they get forgotten about, or they never quite get their credit because somebody else jumped on it, or just kind of got forgotten. So that was kind of what Driven, which then it became Car Kings, is really about. So we did one on Big Daddy Roth. We did a George Barris car, a little red wrecker that was meant to be on Sanford and Son when he won the lottery that never happened.
Mm-hmm.
And then I actually found Carroll Shelby's Pantera that Lee Iacocca gave him a NASCAR engine to put in it and kind of race around in, and kind of that's what started their conversations and around building the Dodge Viper.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually tracked down the actual engine in a junkyard and found it and pulled it out of the junkyard and put them back together. So it was for me a dream come true to be able to talk about this history, to give people credit, and to build these really like wild and fun cars. So that's what I love doing. And for me, it's really important to keep car culture alive and to keep it with kids having fun with cars again. I think you would agree when you started seeing kids not get their driver's license at 16 and not really caring about it because they could talk to their friends on their phone. It's like, yeah, that's an
Right.
experience, but it's not the same experience of getting out and doing something together,
Sure.
and or getting out and going off road like I did with my best friend when I was in high school, and driving out in the desert and starting bonfires and doing all those goofy things before people had phones and cameras, thank
Right.
God.
Right.
And that's what I want to do my part to help to preserve is the love of
The outdoors.
automobiles
An
and
automobile.
customizing and keep call like I want to bring back car culture again. So
It's
that's why I
coming
do it.
too, dude. I
Oh,
see it. It's coming.
right?
It's amongst us right now more than I think we even realize. It really has
I think
come
you're
back
right.
on. It's pretty
I think,
neat. Do
I
you
think a good
keep
word.
up? Do you keep up with the values? Are you a value person, a price point person on these? I'm sure you have people that work for you that do, but like, which cars are worth what? And because where I'm heading is like, the Hemi Cuda is a car that
Yeah,
obviously became $1 million car. And
crazy.
do you keep up with that? So do you have a project, like what is the next Hemi Cuda for today? If there's a
So
car collector that wants to buy and hold, what do you have any advice?
I used to be all over that and actually did a pretty good job.
It's a lot
Unfortunately,
to keep up with.
oh, it's insane. Unfortunately, I always sold something like right as it started taking off, and then and oh, geez, man, if I would have held it another couple of
I
years,
sold a
like,
93 Cobra R with
uh,
400 miles on it
ooh,
Wednesday in my lane for 205,000.
isn't that
We could have
amazing?
bought that car 5 years ago for 60. or 50.
Yeah.
200. I think there was 400 of them. I mean, but that's what, that might be the next Hemi Cuda. I don't
mean,
know.
you never know. What's interesting is, and to answer your question, I used to just be obsessed and stay on top of it,
Mm-hmm.
and now since I've gotten more responsibilities, I'm less on top of it
Sure.
than I used to be. I find it interesting that now we're getting into the next generation, that the cars that were ugly start looking good
Mm-hmm.
again.
Mm-hmm.
And like I saw Celine's all of a sudden that were
I
the
had a
joke.
20,000-mile Celine Wednesday. I bought a collection of cars. I'm joking saying it was El Chapo's doctor because it was down near the border, and his last name was Guzman. But we had a
Right?
couple of Celines that were signed by Steve, the great big whale tail. You remember the Celine look? And we
Yeah, we
sold those
sold
cars.
those here.
Yeah, we sold those cars high. We had five 93 Cobras, all under 1,000 miles in a row, and we had that Cobra R, and we had two Celines and two GTs, and and that's what's got that on my mind. I'm looking at these Cobras,
Yeah.
and I'm like, why are they bringing so much?
Yeah. Well, I'm really into like original paint colors.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you looked at the Mystic or the Mystichrome, I think there were about 1,000 of those Cobras built. Like
Right.
to me, that's
And teal is the next best one.
oh man, I'd love to find a
I've
teal.
got an 11,000 mile one that did not make the sale, a 93
Well,
teal, if you want that.
here's the cars that I'm interested in, like right now, because there's quite frankly, there's too many cars that I love because I've got automotive ADD,
Right.
and I'm all over the place. But where my weakness is if it's a car that originally sold at Galpin. So if you ever see something like that, let
That
me know.
that's you.
I think I missed a T-Bird one time that was here because that would have been like the oldest one we have. But I did find an actual garage find of we built these with Heinz Proctor, who started the European sunroof in America, and we did that helped launch his business into sunroofs. And we may have done the very first one. We certainly did the first ones dealer installed. But we built these rumble seat Mustangs
Mm-hmm.
that we used as parade cars. And there was one that had the sunroof in it and the rumble seat that we used like in all of our pictures. And finally found that after 50 years or 50
Are
some
you kind
years.
of like Jay Leno, where everybody's sending you this stuff because they know you want it?
Well, to some degree, yes. Eventually you get to the point where
You're
when
full,
when you're finding cars and they start finding you.
right?
So that has definitely happened. But so that was
So
actually one.
the
The
phone
funny thing is,
rings, huh?
it does. The funny thing is, I saw that car in a lady's garage like 25, 30 years ago before we ever bought, cars like that.
Mhm.
And uh, like I said, my dad wasn't really into collecting cars or anything like that, and I think she was the original owner. And then I lost her phone number, and I was like, gosh, I know she's somewhere around here. So that car's like been on my mind for decades. And then somebody had it in Santa Clarita and called us and said, "Hey, would you be interested?" I'm like, "Oh man, I've been dreaming about this car for at least 20 more. I think it was 30 years." And we finally got it back, and then that'll be a great project for us to restore.
How do you sell something? How do you sell something when you decide that you're going to sell one of these?
Again, they come, sometimes they just,
Somebody shows up and hits you with something you weren't even expecting, so you're like, okay, I'm going to let that one go. That's
yeah,
enough.
yeah. And so so that it comes to us. We're actually getting ready to open up a new little showroom in Beverly Hills.
Hmm.
And I think that's going to be an opportunity to bring in some of the more, unusual cars and high-end cars that we've had that it's, we're ready to sell. There was a time when I took some to the auctions.
Hmm.
So we did some at Barrett Jackson and RM and some of the others. Um, I haven't looked into that as closely, but it's like anything. There's a time when you're having fun buying, and then there's a
Sure.
time when you're having fun selling. And now I'm more interested on the selling part. So we're actually getting that together, and then we'll see what the next phase.
What is the car count on the non-inventory? I mean, you got your auto inventory for your dealerships, then you got this thing on the side.
Yeah.
Do you have 100, 200, 500? Do you know how many you
We've
have?
got over 100 cars.
Sure.
And so those, I'm actually like literally in the process right now of getting all the descriptions on them, getting the pictures together, and then we're going to look at retailing. It's kind of been something I've fantasized for a long time because we've got these unusual cars that people don't have, and Bring a Trailer's been unbelievably successful, obviously. And at the same time, the auctions, I've just seen them,
Sure, it's going crazy.
Just crazy.
But the fees are real, man. They charge. I mean, don't you wish you made 18% on your deals?
Good Lord, yes.
It's crazy.
I think I started going to the auctions. I think it was 99. And that's when my best friend, one of my best friends in the world, and he was our wholesale manager as well. And I'm going,
is that Dana?
It is Dana, yeah, who unfortunately passed away recently, heartbreaking. But he and I would go to the auctions every year. And, the first year at Pebble Beach, we're seeing like museum pieces go for like $70,000, $80,000. And that was like when it was
Big deal.
lot of money.
Right.
And like a Cobra going for 200 grand. Wow. we didn't know.
Right.
I mean, these were like perfect automobiles. Then we saw like the quality of cars go down, but the prices keep going up. And you think it's a fluke. But man, just ever since for the last 25 years, it's just been
you can't build them for that.
Almost straight up.
You cannot build them for that. You cannot build them for that, sir. You think you can, but
you
still
can't.
You never could. Where is your store? I've seen pictures. I've seen the videos of when you'll open the collector car room to the public. You kind of have a fair one weekend. Is that once a year in October?
Yeah, we do our Galpin car show, which we call 7 car shows in one, because we bring all of car culture together. But we're here in the San Fernando Valley, right off the 405 and Roscoe Boulevard.
Well, let's swap numbers, and I'd love to come over there and see it. And thank you so much for spending time with us. Beau Boeckmann, Galpin Ford, the son of the guy who started the customization of the car culture on the West Coast. It's a pretty fair statement, I think.
Yeah, well, certainly he was the first with as a car dealer where we did the customizing and then sold it customized. I don't know anyone that did that before us, but we're lucky. Out here in Southern California, we had some of the best car builders and customizers in the world. So
sure,
we were blessed to be ground zero of a lot of that custom car culture.
It's incredible. I love it out there. I'm glad I don't pay the taxes out there, but I love it out there.
Yeah.
It's good to see you, man. Thanks for coming on.
Good to see you too, John. Thanks so much, and we look forward to having you out here.
See you soon. See you, Beau.
Okay.
Beau Boeckmann, Galpin Ford.